Welcome. I'm Camille.
And I'm Gretchen. We're starting over our pod. That always sounds so funny.
I know.
We're not starting over our podcast. Our podcast is called Starting Over.
But we are starting over, too.
That's
right.
true.
That's
right.
True.
So before we get going, we appreciate if you guys will like, share, and subscribe. You mean a lot to us to be here, so thank you so much.
That's right.
What do we want to talk about today, Camille?
Well, I've had a lot of people that are going through a lot of loss. And so they've had some people pass away, and they feel like they're starting over literally.
Yeah.
And, they asked me this week, what's some advice you would give me to how do I deal with this? I'm having a hard time. And so here's what I kind of came up with for them. How you really deal with loss, if you got to kind of keep a schedule. You want to do a self-care routine and don't forget about you. You do need some alone time because that's important to kind of process through what just happened. And that's important, but don't go alone for too long.
Yeah.
You got to still break bread with people and spend time and grieve and cry and talk about it. But I really think I would say to people, let it change you. Don't fight the change that just happened. Let the change happen because it is a time to literally start over.
Yeah. I think it's, especially I think about those that have lost children.
Oh, wow.
That you totally have to restart. You have to restart your heart. You have to restart your thoughts.
Yeah.
Just your daily routine, And the beauty of what we teach in Starting Over is that at any moment you have the ability to feel better. Yeah. Regardless of the circumstance, it may not take all the pain away, but you can find some things to feel better about. And then the snowball happens and you pick up more and you pick up more because we know time heals. It doesn't take away a memory. It doesn't take away the feeling of loss. But it certainly can, the more you find things to feel good about, the more you feel faith that you can get through it.
Well, and even if you're angry, look, the stages of grief are I think, pretty profound. But the first thing is denial. No, this didn't happen. You don't want to feel it. You really don't want to surrender to this. But then you do, and then you'll go through the stages of grief, and they're not really in order. It's not like, oh, I'm angry now, or oh, I'm sad now, I'm in denial now, or I'm feeling guilty. Like all the feelings are going to be there. The feels are real. Mm-hmm. But I think if you resist the change, if you resist the feelings, you have to take time to grieve. You have to take time to really, again, let the change occur, let the starting over happen, right?
And I think that's the case with any change, whether it's a divorce, empty nesters, any discrepancy that's happened in your life that's requiring you to redo.
Yeah.
I think alone time is very important to process how you feel. Sometimes you have a ton more experience than me. Sometimes I just know from my personal experience, you tend to be distracted if you're doing stuff, but you're not really processing feelings.
That's why I think you have to really take time to stop and feel. And the change, your life is altered forever when something's gone forever. And like she said, even if you lose a job or you're moving, end of an era, end of a career, end of a high school, end of college, you want to stop and leave that with love. Leave that and remember the good, let the bad process through. But you have to really consciously create the let go. You have to consciously process what just happened. If you just want to roll into something new, look, some people are they'll start self-medicating, they'll get in a new relationship, they'll get themselves distracted. They'll keep themselves distracted. That's not really helping you. I mean, in the immediate thing that just happened, fine. You need to just kind of distract yourself. I get it.
Right.
But you can't do that forever.
No. And honestly, the premise of Starting Over years ago was based on the fact that people for second-time marriages or even just relationships tend to go back to what they knew.
Yes.
And they're really attracting the same thing, just a different covering.
That's right.
And so not taking that time to process what happened, what was my part in it, what was that person's part in it, and how can I change so that I'm not in a place of attracting that again. That's in the case of relationships or even if a job. Obviously, if you lose a loved one, it's a whole different ballgame there. So what do you do to help people? Like, what's the time frame, Camille, where they need to give themselves some space to grieve?
An immediate passing, usually there's some conveniences, meaning your job or people will understand, look, I'm taking some time. you need at least a few weeks to just reacclimate emotionally. And in those few weeks, it's really hustle bustle. You're either, if you're burying somebody, if you're going to services, etc., if you're traveling. So you need 2 weeks to just kind of get things complete. And then you need 2 weeks to probably process. And maybe I have people journal. Like the first thing I say is, let's get journaling. And even if you have to go back to work or you've got young children, you can't just sit on the couch and remember things. You do want to journal. So you do some self-care things. You write a gratitude list. What are you thankful for? And if people just can't seem to really recover, I say, look, write a letter. Dear departed, like who's passed. What is it you never got to say? What is it you really want them to know? You write this letter to them. And then the other half of that is, after you've said everything, and I mean empty yourself, love, anger, hate, whatever there is, get complete on paper, whatever you need to say. Then the other half of that is, dear Camille, dear Gretchen, dear you that wrote the letter, this is what they would say in return. What would they say to you? Like, complete that loop of communication. Right. And when you do that, it's interesting how that works. I tell you, that completes something in the world of communication, because people, like when someone leaves, we're not ready for them to go. Like, we're not ready. Our relationship time wasn't
our
over
agenda
with them.
didn't say that was a good
That's
timing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I wasn't done with you, And so once that there's like a completion, you kind of let go of the dream, the future you thought you were going to have together, etc. There seems to be like a settling. Okay, this is complete. This is over, and you say everything. They say something, like you write a letter to yourself, and then I say, watch for God crumbs.
I was just going to ask. To me, I think that actually becomes the miracle of death. And when you can be in a place that you can't explain it, you can't prove it, but you just know that a feeling or a prompting or a sign or something was given from a loved one. Yeah. And I think that is probably one of the biggest blessings we can have, that we are not alone. Yeah. And that they really haven't totally left us. Yeah. I think it's really hard to, and I've never lost a child, but I think it would be really hard to not be able to physically touch them. Yeah, yeah. Because in a lot of religions, a lot of religions believe that we will see them again. And while that's a good thought and that feels good, at the moment when you're missing them, it's not enough. It's not enough. So those breadcrumbs are actually, I think, moments where it offers that peace.
And I call them God crumbs, like breadcrumbs, God crumbs. But I do feel like when you're in that vulnerable state and you've been willing to, just listen to your emotions and put them on paper, and you're taking the time to introspect and write it down, and then you receive that message back from your loved one, then you kind of just can settle into, okay, I've completed this process. That God crumb feels like maybe a sense of peace washes over you. I'll tell you something that happened to me that was so profound, and I just can't deny that I saw Jan, my dear friend Jan. Remember Janny? I knew this woman for 20 plus years, best friends, and she died suddenly. It was just, it was a shock. It was traumatic for me. I knew within 20 minutes of her passing. I had a phone call, and I just could not believe she died. So long story short, I went to her funeral, and as her children were speaking at the microphone, I was just really incomplete with how things were happening. And the one child that was so much like her, I literally saw an image of her, and she had wings. She literally had white wings, and she was jumping up and down like, no, it's amazing. No, it's okay. I'm okay. And so I had this image, and then I'm driving home, and this bird, this dove, this white dove, was flying toward the windshield, and I'm like, no, I don't want to kill you. I don't want to hit you, please. And I couldn't get away. And this bird literally passed into it was on my left side, the driver's door, did a little Yui, flipped a Yui, and it's literally by my driver's window, just flying next to me for miles. And I was just sobbing. Yeah. I knew that was Jan. Yeah. I knew that was Jan.
What a wonderful, wonderful gift. So now, to me it feels like that memory, that definition of what you knew that was Jan. Yeah, that probably wiped away a lot of hurt and a lot of pain over her death.
It did. And honestly, just that comfort in she's still here. She's there's a part of she's just gone on. Yeah. And I talk to her I talk to her, and I have this feeling that she's there. I can sense her, Yeah. But I'll tell you, if you're still in a heavy amount of pain, or you're avoiding dealing with the grief and the pain, it's hard to really just have that sense of peace and just go, hey, are you around? I want to feel you. You have to kind of be in a receptive state. So if you're upset still, heavily upset, it's hard to feel. You know that?
I think one of the smartest things you said, though, Camille, is right off the bat, if you write that letter and you get all those feelings out, especially if you had a relationship that wasn't settled, then you're in a place you've said it and you can receive an answer. But if you've just kind of pushed it off to the side and you didn't deal with those feelings, it would be much harder to get a reception or an answer from that person when you still had those feelings.
Exactly right.
You mentioned about including those that have passed on, into your daily life. And I think that's actually something that's been kind of fun for me. I used to date a guy in my 20s who was a professional race car driver. And
James.
Yeah, Jim Pace.
I remember him,
And he died of COVID. And now every time I get in my car, I talk to him, okay, Jim, drive me to wherever I'm going. And something will happen. I'll avoid a lane or something like that. And I'm just like, thanks, Jim. And I literally feel like he's taking the wheel. It's not Jesus, it's Jim.
Are you speeding? Is he trying to race?
Right.
His nature. I
but
love that.
And it's even
Good
like
for you.
even directions. Be like, Jim, I don't know where we got. You just take the wheel.
Yeah.
And that has brought me like
Peace.
a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even though I haven't talked to this guy in a long time.
Yeah.
That's what he did here on Earth. And so I just kind of labeled him like, well, now you're my driver. Like, what's that expression? Like the limo driver, James. I'm like,
I call him James.
Jim.
That's right.
James, yeah.
I love that.
So I think that those, from my experience, and I know you believe this too, those that have passed are willing to have a relationship still with us.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if we're this too, those that have passed are willing to have a relationship still with us.
Oh, yeah.
And I think if we're open to looking for signs, I had a friend who lost a son, and every time we would go to the cemetery where he was buried, there was always this robin that would sit on the top of a pine tree.
Yeah.
Why would it be? You have all those branches, and it was just dangling barely on the top, and that bird was always there,
Interesting. Yep. Well, and again, people, it's almost like in the eye of the communicator. So what I mean by that is, to anybody else, it wouldn't make a difference. But when you're receiving that message, you're having that insight, you're having that sensation, if that's a communication for you.
You do.
Yeah.
Because there's a memory attached to
That's
it
right.
somehow, or there's an explanation. I know when my aunt died, this was the weirdest thing. When I was a kid, and
Was this Barbara?
Yeah,
Yeah.
A and B.
Mm-hmm.
So when we used to go to Florida to my grandparents' house, they had a bunch of quail. And somebody from Texas, where we lived, I never saw quail. But as a kid, I was like, oh my gosh, there's a mom and dad and all these babies. And that was just such a fun memory. Now, Aunt B and her family were always there in Florida as well. Anyway, she dies, and I look in my backyard, and there's all these quail.
Yeah.
And I'd never seen them there before, And so the first thing that came to my mind was Florida Aunt B. Even though you could have looked in the backyard and be like, oh, well, yeah, they live over the river and there's this field.
Sure.
It didn't land on me that way.
No. That's what I'm saying is the message you got was, I love you, I'm here. And that's what it is. I again, there's a communication that got received by you.
Yeah.
I believe that. Well, we've had some spiritual phenomenon in my office the last time we were together with kind of a weird...
So it's... I say this in jokingly, but I'm not joking. There's where Camille's clients sit, the wall behind them is blank.
Yeah, nothing there.
And sometimes when you're talking with Camille, she's listening, but she starts focusing on the wall behind you. Yeah. Because why?
Well, I see images, or I'll see a shadow, or I'll see something around that person, and and I just I don't always address it, but I'm watching to see what's kind of coming in around people. And there's just there's orbs. I've got a picture. I mean, I think I've showed you this picture when I was in Canada at this retreat.
Oh yeah.
And these people that again, there's this energy behind them, and it is showing off for me. Remember that? So, I mean, there's just sometimes other beings, spirits, and people come to me for all sorts of reasons, but sometimes they have loved ones that have departed, and they show up sometimes in my office. I can't guarantee that, but they do. And so, and I get, and so I say things like, what is this rainbow color blue thing or whatever? Or is there's like a blanket that's all, yes, oh my gosh, we made a blanket with all of her dresses. It's like weird things I will say, and it's like, because I'm getting that information.
You're like the Tyler Henry.
Yeah, right? I know, right? I love Tyler Henry, so adorable.
But
yeah, we were there. We were in my office last week.
Last week.
And we're just sitting there.
Camille has her planner on like a little easel.
Yeah.
She writes her schedule and so forth. And I'm talking to her. She's looking at me, listening to me, and the page completely turns.
Yeah.
Not just like whoop, whoop. No, completely turns. I said to Camille, did you see that?
Yes. I'm like, yeah, my page just completely turned on its own.
On its own. We weren't channeling anything. We were asking everything.
And I was like, let me look. This is something I need to read on that. Nope, nothing was special.
There. She's looking around behind me. Is there somebody there? So
Strange.
Neither one of us were freaked out. We were just kind of like, okay, what was that? Well, then that we went into our studio, started filming. As I'm editing, I send Camille this clip, and I'm like, there was this white
orb
that went from one corner of the screen behind us down to the next.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and it was pretty big, good size.
It was probably like for 3 seconds of a frame.
Yeah, I'm in here. I'm here. Like it was getting attention.
Right.
Something turned the page, get attention. Something around us got attention. Now we don't know exactly what that is. And then we had something hit my window. And Gretchen thought it was literally like something in my room. I said, no, that was something outside coming at the window. Now, maybe I need to walk outside and see if it was a dead birdie out there because it hit pretty hard. But it's either some bird that just hit my window and died or something, but it was loud.
I think it's
strange.
It's interesting to pay attention to birds.
Yeah, birds are... From
what I've read, like birds are the easiest messenger.
Yes, they are.
That those that have passed on can share with us.
That's exactly right.
And you've probably heard the significance of cardinals. Those have a lot to do with those loved ones that have passed.
And doves.
And I always ask, it's so funny. There's this yellow, I think it's a finch. Mm-hmm. It's bright yellow, and I believe those are the males, and they always travel as like husband and wife thing. Yeah. I haven't seen these birds in 2 years. And just the other day, I was outside, and then there they are. And so I was like,
come back.
Who are you?
Right.
What you want me to know?
Yeah.
Because they're usually a winter bird.
I know. That's right. And it's now summer. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's usually some sort of interesting signs. I had this woman come into my office last week, and I could not get here. It was the weirdest. I dropped my keys. I was like, it was becoming like a joke. I screwed up my makeup. It was unbelievable. I could not get, and then I had this big thing delivered right when I was leaving, and it had perishables. I had to get it in the house. I'm like, are you kidding me? And I was like, Lord, what is, and the name, I'm canceling, the day. I just couldn't believe it. It was it was a horrible morning. And I just kind of stopped and said, what is messing with my mojo? Because that's not usually how I roll, right? No. Mm-hmm. So I get here, and this woman's she's here, and I was late, and I'm like, I am so sorry. I texted her, I'm going to be late. She said, I know why you're having a horrible morning. I said, oh, get that curse off me, girl. What are you doing? She said, no, there's actually this woman who didn't want her to come see me, and she said she hates you. And I'm like, do I know her? And she said, no, she doesn't know you, but she knows that you're powerful, and she knows that I'm leaving her to come work with you. So I was like, oh, interesting. But it was really like I had this just force around me that was just trying to trip me up.
To make
put a stick in my spoke, and I was like, so I think we kind of, look, I believe we all have these abilities to sense and feel. We all have a natural knowing.
Sure.
And, when we lose someone, that's probably the one time in our lives, or babies are born. I think when we have heaven open up and take someone or drop someone off, I think that's when we have the ability to kind of feel and sense things spiritually the most.
Yeah, and I think too, you were talking, and I even confirmed, like, your alone time is really important to an extent, and that is your time to tune in and to be aware. Now, granted, you were driving down the road, but when you've got a bird coming at you, you think you're going to hit, and then it all of a sudden starts traveling with you. Yeah, you're going to pay attention to that.
Oh, yeah.
But, I think if you're open to it, and this isn't,
Yeah.
to me, I think this is probably one of the most loving things that can happen. It's not a scary thing.
No.
It's a matter of people wanting to reconfirm that they're in a good place
Yeah.
and that they're okay, and they want you to know that. I think if your
Exactly.
children were like, if they decided to up and go on vacation and didn't tell you,
Yes.
you would want to know, like, you're okay.
Yeah.
All you just needed was a little
Yeah.
phone call, a little text, and then you're okay. And I sometimes think
Yeah.
that's what's happening on the other side.
To me, it's a sign. And look, I have so many clients that'll come to me and they will validate. Oh, I really received this sign. And sometimes it's just people that are not spiritually inclined. They're shocked. They're traumatized by it. Like, is this real? Does this really happen? It does. It does happen. Because I do think that we are, we're in a school called life, and we're spirits as well as bodies and minds and all that stuff. And our intentions are powerful, and we do have the ability to create things.
Absolutely.
So.
And we have the ability to interpret things as well.
Yeah.
We appreciate y'all being here. Thank you so much. Again, if you want to like, share, subscribe to Starting Over with Camille and Gretchen, we'd appreciate it. We'll see you next time.
Bye now.